So let us welcome you to our very first Fireside Chat. This is the Fireside Chat where you might get burned. And today's topic, a very controversial one in the sales and marketing world. And is it, should SDRs report to sales or should they report to marketing? So I'm super excited about this for myself. Arthur Castillo here. I actually started off on the sales side. I've been selling tech for the past 7 years, was selling Chili Piper as an AE, and recently moved over to the dark side of marketing. So this topic is very near and dear to my heart. But we also are joined by two individuals that have very strong stances on this topic. So I will toss it over to Nicolas if you wanted to give us a quick intro, name, title, company, and maybe some ideas on the topic.
I'm Nicolas Vandenberghe. I'm co-founder and co-CEO of Chili Piper. The other founder and CEO being my wife, Alina. So we share everything, including two titles. In addition to my title of co-CEO, I've been acting head of sales when we started Chili Piper. I was I was the first person selling Chili Piper and kept growing the team until we raised funds. So we bootstrapped for 3 years. And more recently, about 18 months ago, I took over as a CMO. So I went from sales CMO. So I feel I'm super qualified to talk about the transition from sales to marketing and back. That's who I am.
Perfect. And Kyle, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Kyle Lacy. I'm SVP of Marketing at Seismic, an enablement suite, helping all go-to-market teams manage content, production, everything from start to finish, the entire life cycle, plus training and coaching. I was past CMO at Lessonly. At Lessonly, the entire outbound team, so the entire SDR team, inbound and outbound SDRs and BDRs, reported in the marketing org for 4 years up until the acquisition when we were acquired by Seismic last August. So very strong opinions here, of course, but I've seen it on both sides. I've seen it work well at Seismic, and I've seen it work well at Lessonly in completely different orgs. So I'm pumped to have this conversation.
Amazing. So we won't have any boring debate structure here, no political debate-esque rebuttals or moments of speaking over each other. You'll both have time to answer key points that I'll be bringing up. And I know this debate is nothing new, but I'm excited to speak with both of you who have been practitioners and have seen both sides of the coin. So Kyle, why don't we start off with you? Give us some initial thoughts on why SDRs should report to marketing.
I think ultimately it's about revenue alignment. I think it is when you have a outbound BDR team that is supporting an account executive team and they report into marketing, it forces marketing and sales leadership to talk because you have to, especially if the outbound BDRs are supporting a fairly large percentage of quota, like sourcing a fairly large percentage of quota. At Lessonly, it made sense because over half of our quota was inbound, right? Like our inbound engine was just awesome, right? So that's number one. Number two is that it helps with you're quicker on messaging and positioning and versioning of it. When the SDRs are synced directly with product marketing, you're increasing workflow, the feedback loop is there. And honestly, I think that the third one is that SDRs feel more like humans and less like robots in a marketing team. Not that sales makes people feel like robots. And then the fourth, I'll do a fourth one.
How is that, Kyle? How is that you feel more human?
Well, marketing's a little bit more experience-oriented, human. Like sales is a little bit more science-oriented. Like you don't make 150 calls a day. You need to get on the phone, stuff like that. Now we can debate that. The fourth one is that, and this is one where nobody agrees with me on. So I'm just going to preface it. Is that I believe that SDRs reporting into marketing give them more of a career path outside of just being account executive. Gives them more options.
Those are, yep. Madison nailed it. Some spicy takes. So, Nicolas, why don't you give us a little idea on why you think SDRs should report to sales and why?
Well, I have a little secret. Is that I used to believe that they should report to marketing, and I tried it. So that's my secret weapon that I've actually tried and changed it. So why did I try to put it in the marketing? We hired a CMO back at a couple of years ago with this actually strong experience across the board. And so my thinking is if I give that person responsibility for pipeline, a lot like what you said, Kyle, then he should have all of the pipeline generation, right? So across the board. And it seems like a good idea to have somebody fully responsible for pipeline generation and then the account executive as the closing machine. The other reason why I thought it was a good idea to put it under marketing is that, in my view, a large part of doing a good job in SDR, BDR is messaging, right? You're sending emails or you're making phone calls and you want to say the right things to entice people. And that's, in theory, the job of marketers to come up with messaging. I say in theory because we can go into the detail of that. So I'm thinking, here's our CMO drafting messages for our ads. Is our CMO drafting messages for our website? Then he should draft messages for our cadences. All good, we go with that. And what I found is a lack of energy. I didn't get that fire from the BDR team. My CMO had a lot of balls in the air, and the BDRs, or SDRs, we call them, with just one piece that you would not give a lot of attention. And when I tried to understand that lack of energy, I came to realize that something that matters a lot more than we realize in life in general, and this idea of a tribe, like we feel that we belong, and if you think of an SDR when they start their career, they don't say, I'm going to start. Granted, they have not attended the webinar, and maybe by the end of the webinar, they'll say that they want to be a marketer. But when they come, typically they say, I want to come in sales. That's what they say. They think of themselves as the tribe of sales. They think of salespeople. And it is true that, especially at Chili Pepper, we actually have them go into all sorts of jobs, but most of them do become account executive. Most of them aspire to become account executive. So being part of that other tribe, what I found is that it has the benefit of energizing them, like making much more ready to take action and move. By the same token, the leader of marketing. It's funny that you say sales is science, marketing is more. The leaders in marketing are going to look at the numbers, the conversions, and are going to have a both creative and analytical approach. The sales leader is all about people, right? You have to get people pumped up to close the deal. You have to train them to so the sales leader is in a better position to energize the team of SDRs. And that's exactly what I found. I found that when I moved them to sales and we brought them in, then all of a sudden the Slack messages were firing up all across the board. Well done, keep going, congrats, and all that good stuff that was a precursor to actually getting meetings booked, which at the end of the day is what matters, right? Yeah. So that's my story around it. Yeah.
Amazing. No, both coming out swinging with some of these. Now, I wasn't going to get to this a little later, but I saw in the chat somebody wanted to hear a little bit more about the career trajectory. So, Kyle, if SDRs did report to marketing, how does this impact their career development? Would love to for you to speak a little bit more to that.
I think it gives them more of a view of what else they could do. That's more individual contributor, practitioner roles, field marketing. If they find interest in product marketing, they can start work. Yeah, exactly. They could start working on. We had an SDR go into the product marketing org at Seismic. We've had SDRs go, of course, to account executive roles and also outbound roles. I agree that most SDRs are going to move into a sales role, but what I found is that at Lessonly, we had quite a few move into different services, as an example. So I just feel like when they live in a sales org, it's pretty much focused on AEs because you have a headcount capacity model, right? Like you got to fill the headcount if you're sales led. So of course you're gonna prioritize them. I think at marketing it gives them a little bit more view. Now, it's imperative that the marketing and sales leadership are in agreement on how to talk about career trajectory, right? Like the marketer can't just say, you should just go to field marketing. You need to look at all of it. So it's that's why it gets back to alignment. I just think that with the team separate, it helps with just that conversation around career trajectory. So I just see more of them going into like what you did, Arthur, with field marketing, but we've seen quite a few on the services side too.
It seems like a fair statement that by being outside of the traditional path, and they can think out of the box and look at other options. And it is true that at Chili Pepper, we've had to compensate for that. So now we've got the thing called the job fair. It's actually happening next week, where we're going to have the SDR. They go and meet the different departments and kind of, hey, what do you do here? And, what is a field marketer? What is a go-to-market marketer? And so on. For that very reason, we wanted to make sure they're open-minded. Overall, I'd say that once, and we've had that happen, once you have one or two make the jump and go to another department, then already you put the seed in their mind that they could be doing something else. But it's worked really, really well. I do think that SDR is an amazing way to start a career or to transition a career. We have actually a lot of people in our SDR team, because you just learn, as I mentioned, you learn messaging, you learn trying to understand the market, you try to understand what make people react, what make people act, and you have to learn the product, the environment, the market. So it's a very intense learning experience that is then reusable in a lot of places. No question.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think. I see it from both sides. And I think what's unique here, Nicolas, about Chili Piper is we really do give them that option, where I think traditionally SDRs are kind of only looking at the sales path. So I know we're a little bit unique here, but I wanted to bring up a comment that Kyle made many moons ago for you, Nicolas. So Kyle said, the reason inbound SDRs should report to marketing is because, and I quote, one shared goal, one shared mission, they all are working towards the same goal, and it creates alignment. So how would you respond to that, Nicolas?
Oh, that's easy. We all know it. We've eradicated inbound SDRs, right? We've replaced them with our solution. It's called Form Concierge, and any solution is booked directly. We no longer need any inbound SDRs. And people argue, well, some people don't request a meeting. So, I'm actually not kidding. I really advocate the fact that there should be no inbound SDRs. That somebody who asks for a meeting should get the meeting immediately in real time and not have to wait for somebody to get back to them and wonder who's going to get back to them. Some people argue, well, not every inbound is a meeting request. It could just be, attending a webinar or downloading a white paper. But my view on that is that this is just warm outbound in effect. It's just some outbound that has done something, but you still need to go outbound and get their attention. It's not fundamentally different from going cold. Actually, if you look at our numbers and conversion rates, there are buckets that we cold outreach that converts better than people who attended webinars, right? So it's a signal, but it's just one signal among other signals. So my view is that inbound SDRs should not report to marketing because they should not exist.
very hot.
I think it's all dependent on a lot of things. Like if you've got great leads storing on the back end, you understand intent, you can deliver it to the right AE at the right time to set the meeting without discovery, especially with enterprise type business, then great. I think that is very hard to do, and I think it can be expensive to do. But where we found inbound is helpful is just on chat too, like especially if somebody has questions on the website. Now, it really just depends on the business model. Like we had inbound SDRs at Lessonly because they were economical. Like it made sense in our CAC model. Like it wasn't. Now you could argue that we could have ripped out everything and put in a calendaring option, but you know that from a CAC perspective it worked. So for us, I think there's also the note to say if you have a sales-led model, inbound is also an opportunity to get people in that funnel, that talent funnel, where we can't negate that. We can't discard that, because some of our best account executives at Seismic and at Lessonly were inbound SDRs. So it's a good entry level for like where we saw a ton of success was teachers. We have 4 or 5 teachers that became inbound SDRs first at Lessonly, and now they're account executives at Seismic, and they're all doing great. And I don't know, like if we didn't have that entry level position available, maybe it could have been outbound, Nicolas, but if we didn't have that entry level position available, we wouldn't have that talent. And they wouldn't have been given the opportunity because they would have been funneled out of the interview process.
Yeah, well, the way I think of it is inbound is outbound with cheating, right? Especially in the case of the chat. Something. So you're cheating because in this case, somebody has already requested a meeting, and your job is to get somebody to request a meeting, and they already have, right? So you're reaching to people. What stunned me when we started Chili Pepper, that I asked these people, how is it going for you? And they say, it's going great. I'm converting at 40%. And I don't know what your statistics was at Lessonly, but I said, wait a minute. So 100 people ask for a meeting and 60 of them don't get it, right? And the reason why they thought that converting at 40%.
That's not good.
That's not good, right? Exactly. And the reason why
something's deeper there.
The reason why they thought it was good is because the guy next door was an outbound SDR who's converting at 1%, right? That's about what you get on you 1 or 2. You get 1%. So if they look how many meetings I'm getting out of my emails and phone calls compared to you, so it's awesome. I've actually had the chief revenue officer telling me, listen, I'm not touching my inbound process. I'm converting at 40%. As if to say, it was amazing to do that. And I kept saying, but look, you'll be leaving 60% on the table. So I hear the idea of an entry level on that, but I just think as a business person that I can't afford to lose 60% of my pipeline for any reason, like training or growth entry.
Yeah, well, I think we were at like 75, but
so that's better than a 40%. Yeah,
40, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, you're still living. It's inevitable, right? If you have people coming on the weekend at night and they have to wait, it's inevitable that you're going to have some losses, right? That people forget that they did, and I do it all the time, especially when things are a bit urgent. It's a cliche, but it's true that somebody gets back to you, it turns out it's what you were looking for, and then you go with it, right? Or if you don't go with it, then you have an advantage because you've started with them, and we tend to get attached to when we start the motion, then the other ones are compared to the first alternative, right? So that they become the reference point, and then the other ones, which is very critical in sales. It's like in Sales 101, you always say you want to structure the debate, right? You want to structure the debate. So, for example, if people look at what features are important, you want to be the one telling them what features should be important, right? If people think that what matters, you want to structure how they should think of it. So if you're the first person or company they've talked to, then you have that advantage of structuring the debate. So you're going to win a lot more if you go fast. So that's the reason why I think it's so critical to automate that process and make sure people can just book in real time, and you don't lose these prospects. Another important thing is chat. So you said chat has to be staffed, and so that's a very interesting question on chat because it's in between chat. It's somebody who's showing interest, but not quite ready to request a demo. So then you could make the argument, well, you need somebody to warm them up. And that one, I'll say, there's no question that it's more debatable whether you should still bypass these SDRs or we should have an SDR involved. I'll make the case for bypassing the SDRs. The idea that what I found talking to thousands of companies that we have as customers or as prospects is that the qualification process is in 99% of the cases something that can be summarized in 2 to 3 questions, right? So in the end, you can ask, like for us, who says, are you on Salesforce? Are you not on Salesforce? Are you on HubSpot? Are you not on HubSpot? Okay, then we can't work with you. At Twilio, they say, do you have a project? Have you started a project? But it's a simple question. They say, oh, we have to call to find out if they have started a project. What I find is that if you ask a question in a form, in most cases, people answer honestly. They just say, yes, I have a project, and no, I have a project. And, this is what the answer. So in effect, the qualification question that where you think you need a human being to do it is actually quite simple. So in a chat, what we're recommending as an implementation is say, look, just ask a couple of qualification questions, and then if they are qualified, try to book them. Don't get them into a discussion with an SDRs. We're going to. Now, it is the case sometimes somebody needs to be influenced, but in the case if you are talking about having a first conversation, then you think that the account executive is in a better position to influence them. So I'd make the case that if you combine these simple qualification questions to the fact that the person who's going to go through it is actually closer to what we want to be an opportunity, then you want to move them straight to the account executives. In other words, I've got rid of the inbound SDRs again.
Yeah, I mean, if we had our friend Kyle Lacy on here, he would agree that you shouldn't have any SDRs. It should be a full cycle AE.
Yeah.
But
I mean, the outbound is a different story because the outbound takes so much work and energy to get initial engagement from these companies. It
depends on the business model. Like high velocity, I could argue that in a Lessonly world, when we were doing half of our deals closed in quarter, I would argue that there was probably a good case to be made that we had full cycle account executives.
What was your
high velocity? Not like enterprise is completely different.
What was your outbound motion at Lessonly? You're just going to call the list and because you said it was about half and half.
Yeah, well, inbound represented about 50% of source revenue. 30% came from the outbound BDRs, and that was mostly upmarket. And then the rest came from self-source and the account executives. But that changed pretty dramatically as we moved upmarket. And honestly, I don't think we ever found the perfect formula for enterprise at Lessonly. Now, Seismic's a machine. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
So they have found the formula?
Yeah, I mean, it's heavy sales led, like it's heavy outbound, right? And it's heavy inside sales. But we are good Lord. I've been in the leadership role for almost 8 months and I'm saying they. We're very, very enterprise, right? So it's very different. However, we have MidMarket, we have SMB segments, and those differ depending on a lot of things, ASP, sales cycle, how much pipeline we need to develop. But it's all, it's really dependent on the business model. Like Andrea is calling out LG, which is another very interesting discussion to have.
We're asking the question whether BDRs report into sales or marketing. There's another interesting question is, should enterprise BDRs report into the enterprise team, or should they be part of the entire BDR team, mid-market, and then have the account executive be structured by team? What do you do at Seismic, Kyle?
It's sales. Like, you mean the SDR? Sorry, I was responding to Andrew.
The enterprise, if you have enterprise SDRs and mid-market SDRs, are they part of the same team, or are they part of the enterprise team and the mid-market team? Yeah,
they're all. It's basically regions. So
I see.
And that's Arthur and I were talking about this before we started, but I've seen it's a very different model at Seismic, and I agree. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to agree with you, but I agree on your tribe. I agree on your tribe comment, 100%. I mean, Seismic's over 1,500 employees. Like, our sales org's large, so yes, there is some value there. Inbound SDRs still report into marketing. We moved them over in October at Seismic, but it's a very small percentage of the overall contribution, right? So they Seismic early on unlocked a sales led motion that is like clockwork, which is great.
So that's one thing where we've gone back and forth at Chili Pepper. One logic of thinking an enterprise BDR should work closely with an enterprise account executive because they target a small number of accounts and the work is so specific. And then another argument is to say, well, BDR, the BDR, and even if they work slightly differently, should be part of the BDR team and build cadences and all that. So we've gone back and forth.
So at Lessonly, when we built out an enterprise motion, we started debating whether the enterprise BDR should move over to the enterprise team.
And you didn't do it?
We got acquired. So, we had an enterprise sales leader. And we were just changing out the enterprise sales leader, and so we were moving in that direction. We were still going to keep the SMB unit together because it was high velocity. Like those deals were closing in 45 to 60 days.
And you said that I think the enterprise BDRs are together with the MidMarket BDRs, the same team.
We didn't have a MidMarket at Lessonly, but at Seismic they're all together. The outbound team is together, the inside sales team is together, and then the inbound team lives in marketing.
Let's keep this going here. This is a super exciting discussion. I know, Nicolas, it is a very top of mind discussion on enterprise and where they should report to. But Kyle, I had a question for you. So you said in a LinkedIn comment that it's important to hire a marketing leader who knows how to run an SDR team. And I'll quote you again, you should hire someone who is revenue-minded and knows how to operate a funnel. So Kyle, tell us, what does it mean to be a marketing leader that doesn't know how to run an SDR team? And what happens if you hire one of those?
So I would probably rephrase that. I probably wouldn't call out the SDR team. I 100% agree that all marketing leaders have to understand how to run a funnel. Like if you're a marketing leader that's sitting there and you are not reporting on a pipeline number or revenue number, you do not have a seat at the table anywhere. The exec team, your board, you don't have a seat at the table. You are going to you're always going to get be pulled to the back burner when there's budget opportunity. So for me, I don't, ultimately I don't really care where it reports to. I just believe that you have to hire the people that can run those teams no matter what. Like it was brought up in chat that sales and marketing should be on the same team. I'm fine with that as long as we don't have a bunch of investors and exec teams saying that a sales leader should always lead marketing. It is very rare that I hear that a CMO turns into a CRO.
Yeah.
It's usually a sales leader. So that's where I have the biggest issue here is the marketing needs to get way more involved in quota attainment. And then if you are involved in quota attainment and you are driving revenue, you can do all the other things that are cool, right? You can do the brand stuff that excites people. You can launch an e-commerce brand, whatever, right? As long as you are driving revenue. And I think that's where some marketers just fail. It's because they don't think about that. All they think about is influence and attribution. And they don't think about pipeline creation and revenue.
I think what they argue, and trust me, I've been there, is that they contribute, but you can't track it, and that's the reason why you don't see it, right? I'm sure you've heard that one, Kyle.
But I mean, look, if you're doing great at branding, your revenue is good. You're going to hit your revenue number. Like rising tide lifts all ships. I mean, that is if you have okay. So let's do a disclaimer here. If you have product market fit and you have a repeatable process, then yes, rising tides. Like I'm not going to call out some of the recent companies that have taken hundreds of millions of dollars and had zero revenue. Like that's because they had great marketing, but that didn't work. But if you have product market fit, if you have a repeatable process, then yeah. I mean, I think it's a matter of focusing on the right things and understanding what it takes to drive like growth via marketing.
But it sounds like you're advocating that they have a certain number of dollars in pipeline that's directly attributable to them, right? Yes. They're marketers.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, but it's not that easy, right? Like if you're talking about cross-sell, upsell on the customer side, like selling into your base, I don't believe that you should have a direct source number in marketing because you're full cycle, right? But if you're inbound, like you're driving people to the website and they're closed, then hell yeah, you should have a revenue number. Sorry, we're getting off on it again, but
there's something happening to us, Kyle, and I wonder how you deal with it. We find that a lot of inbound is classified as direct, so people just come to the website.
Yep.
And so we have all these motions, content, and advertising and webinar, but it doesn't seem that these generate pipeline. These all direct, but you would think that those people who come direct have heard about us somewhere, right? So somebody can take credit for that. And that's kind of the argument marketing said, look, our direct is growing, pretty much for actually say, therefore I'm doing something. Yeah. And that reminds me of the advertising. Half of my advertising is wasted, but I don't know which half, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you think, well, it's working because look, the pipeline is growing. You say, well, it's growing, but I can't see any direct effects from what you do. How do you deal with that?
Well, usually the only time when I have heard people question brand is when you're missing your number. When you hit your number, nobody questions what you're doing as long as you are not breaking your budget envelope.
Right.
Honestly, like when we were missing at Lessonly, we were looking at the budget and we were looking at CAC and all that stuff, right? When we were winning and exceeding quarters, the board didn't care. We were growing. We were growing over what we were supposed to be doing. So that allowed me to do brand campaigns like a Lego llama and a board game and things that is a great experience because I had a revenue number that we were hitting.
So how did you deal when you were missing and you couldn't show your share of pipeline?
We had to. We dove directly into the demand funnel and try to figure out what was going wrong. Like we didn't go do a cool like direct mail campaign.
So you refocus your dollars on the action that were directly attributable to pipeline.
Yep.
So we hesitate in doing that because we have this view that more and more pipeline is generated in the dark funnel, that's the term from 6 Sense, right? So the funnel that you don't see but exists out there. So review sites, communities, and so now we've done this big effort in trying to be present in the dark funnel. So obviously having more reviews on G2, being more advocates in the community sites, and so on. And that seems to be the way the markets are moving, right? That more and more people just say, "Look, I'm going to look at this dark funnel." But the problem with dark funnel is that it makes it much harder to attribute, right? So somebody look at the review, most likely they didn't click; they just came directly to the website, and yet you have another direct where you don't know what generated it. Do you see that trend also? That more and more people are coming from non-attributable sources?
Yeah, I mean, it changes dramatically. I still think if you have a strong organic search strategy and a page strategy, it offsets the dark funnel. I mean, but you have no idea what's happening outside of that. You can try really hard to try to track it, of course, and with a good ops team, you can do that, or just good marketing ops person. You don't need a team. But I think that we focus so much on like things that are happening in the dark funnel that we miss the obvious of organic search is still a huge driver of traffic to a website. And those deals close exponentially higher from a conversion rate standpoint than any other. And so we spend all this time trying to figure out a G2 strategy and putting headcount on it, which is fine, which is great. You shouldn't ignore it. And then somebody ignores an organic strategy, which is just better in general from a strategic perspective. So I still believe that a great brand strategy, which is not only marketing, it's talent, it's culture, it is category creation, it is all this stuff. I still think that wins the day no matter what if you do it effectively.
Okay, can you share how much of your pipeline, inbound pipeline, you're able to generate from paid ads and organic search?
At Lessonly, I can't for Seismic. At Lessonly, it was 30% probably.
Inbound.
Organic was 50.
Wow.
50%.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That was closed won revenue. That wasn't pipeline.
So between organic and search, you had 80% covered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow,
So
that's
we were sitting
yeah.
good, but that helped in transitioning to SDRs. That helped with the SDRs conversion rate because it was mostly organic.
Yeah. That's a great point.
It turned out that Leslie had a whole bunch of keywords that were reasonably easy to win and rank for.
Well, we had been doing it for years, so there was a lot, and we spent a lot of time and energy on it, so that's why. But I don't want to get this is not. This
let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to. So I do have a question for you, Nicolas. The one argument for SDRs reporting to marketing is that the outbound campaigns on sales engagement platforms like SalesLoft or Outreach, they more closely resemble those of marketing campaigns than more traditional sales. So how would you respond to something like that?
So that much is very true. And actually, as I mentioned, one of the reasons, maybe the main reason why I put the SDRs under marketing at first. And the way we address it is by getting marketing involved in the design of cadences. So we actually have a weekly meeting, and we have marketers and SDRs. So used to be all SDRs, now it's the SDR leadership. And we discuss what messages work, and we have marketers co-draft the messages in the cadences with the SDR leadership. For that very reason, that the message A should be consistent, and whatever works somewhere is likely to work somewhere else. So we do all sorts of experiments, and we can experiment in multiple channels. So we can try a message on advertising, and we can try the message in the cadence and see what resonates more. It's a great feedback loop, actually, because if something starts working, you can say, hey, well, I should try that. For example, we just launched a product called Distro to do lead distribution and CRM distribution. And we first went after the main competitors, lean data, and so on in our cadences, and then we found that what people were resonating was the fact that it's very simple and easy to use. So then we reoriented our cadences to go with that message of simple and easy to use and easy to deploy. So that's it's actually an opportunity. What was originally the threat, which is that cadences are all about messaging, and marketers know to do that better than sales, has become an opportunity where we collaborate between sales and marketing. And as Kyle mentioned several times, having sales and marketing work together is definitely critical to success of growing revenues.
So Kyle, I do have another question for you, but I'll let you, if you have a comment back on that, happy to hear it.
Oh, go ahead. I agree.
Perfect. So one argument against SDRs reporting to marketing is that traditionally SDRs are commission-based like sales reps. So how would you respond to that?
Create different pay structures.
Would you keep them commission?
Yeah. I wouldn't change the comp structure. I've never changed the comp structure. I think that, but at Leslie, you had even in marketing, a small percentage of your comp was tied to revenue. Now, nice. Not the same, right? Not the quota bearing that the SDRs had. So there was some issue with like facilitating goals on a quarterly basis, because the large SDR team had different perspectives and different goals. Like, I can't say that was easy. It wasn't. Like, we had to work really hard to try to figure out how to make sure everybody was involved in the team. But no, you just create different structures. Like inbound SDRs report into marketing at Seismic. They have a different comp structure.
Actually, Kyle, at Seismic, all marketers compensate with both fixed and variable. They all have a performance component. Yep. And what is the driver of performance? It's the entire revenue of the company, or each one of their own performance targets with variable?
It depends. Some of it's pipeline, some of it's performance. Like a lot of it, if I remember correctly, a lot of it has to do with quarterly performance of the company, bookings.
That's another dilemma we have on because I'm a big believer in individual incentives, right? Maybe I'm too paranoid about free riders, right? Those who don't do anything get the big bonus at the end because the other one has done all the work, right? And so,
I think that, I mean, Lessonly, Seismic, I'm very lucky because I have an HR business partner Carly Roy, that I work with weekly just to think through marketing stuff, right? And we have a great people's team, talent team. Lessonly, we had the same, and it was, I think you kind of get over that by just applying the variables to everybody. It's just smaller. Like at Lessonly, this applies to the SDR conversation. Like SDRs might have, 40% base, 60% variable, or maybe that's flipped. Our design and brand and events team was comped off of total bookings for Lessonly. And then our inbound demand gen team was comped off of specifically inbound revenue. So I think there's ways that you can build that out. Seismic is just pretty much bookings because it's just
how big is the marketing team at Seismic?
50. But that's product marketing lives in product, so that's just corporate marketing. So we have
how many?
9 inbound SDRs, 8 out of that 50.
And how many product marketers do you have in the product?
30, 35.
All right, so it would be 80 if you put it all together.
Yeah. Total, all in, it's between 80 and 90.
Yeah, we have room to catch up then because we're about 20-ish.
I mean, it's a very different, like we're at,
you're a bit bigger.
We're 280 million revenue run rate, like annual revenue run rate. So it's just a different.
Well, that's exactly where we're aiming. So,
I know. I know.
Let's have to copy that model. Amazing. So I know we're coming to the end of this. I do want to hear closing arguments for you both, but I was curious to hear. Let's start with you, Kyle. Curious to hear your thoughts on, is sales a little too over segmented right now between inbound, outbound, maybe AEs not owning CS, anything like that? Do you see more in the future, like coming back to that full cycle sales rep? And then Nicolas, would love to get your thoughts as well. But let's start with Kyle.
I don't. It's it's all business model. Like we could give a blanket statement, but I do think that the time of marketing, CS, sales, all living in separate orgs, and I think the argument could be made that those need to be combined better because it needs to have better alignment. I would argue that operations and enablement teams kind of force that alignment if they're good. But it just depends. If you have a 30 to 60 day sales cycle and it's ASP's low, then maybe you need a full cycle rep because the cost model doesn't work. But if you're an enterprise system and you're selling in the Fortune 100, you're probably not going to have a full cycle sales rep. And I'm sure, somebody's going to throw out, well, Datadog has full cycle sales reps. Well, yeah, they also are doing like 180% net dollar retention, right? Like, there are always there's always the outliers, but I think it's very much dependent on the cost model and how you want to approach go to market. So I don't have a really strong opinion other than if the cost model doesn't work and you're not driving revenue, you probably should change it instead of just like what you all did. You got rid of the inbound SDR. I have a lot of respect for that.
So what would you say is baseline, like 50K, 100K ASP to look into that CAC model?
So at Lessonly, we were at 30, like 30K and above. Like 100K and above, you did 1-to-1 ratios. Between 30K and 100K, it was 3-to-1. So for every 3 AEs, you had 1 outbound. And then for the inbound reps, it was mainly our volume, our lead volume. That was more of the capacity model.
Got it. And Nicolas, I would love to hear your side because I know we have a big SDR organization here, and I do like that AEs are able to we're able to deliver on our promise of if they request a demo and they want to see something and talk pricing, they're able to do that. So would be curious to hear your side. Do you think we are coming back to full cycle sales reps?
No, I don't actually. I'm very much in favor of A's being able to source their own pipeline, but I do think that nowadays there are so many solutions. So, you see growing, there's like 8,000 MarTech solutions and 2,000 sales tech solutions. And, it's super hard to get the attention of people. And I do think it makes sense to keep specializing in SDRs instead of going full cycle A's. Like Kyle said, there are exceptions like maybe Datadog, because they have so much inbound and product-led growth, they're able to do that. But eventually they're going to have to go outbound to grow further than sure. They are. And they're going to have to, and they have, and they're re-specialized. I also have a funny anecdote about specialization post-closing. So when we started Chili Piper, I was the salesperson, I was the opener. And Alina, so it was Alina and I doing all the work, and Alina was the CS and implementation person. So I'd close the deal, she'd take the deal, and she would inevitably grow the account. So she'd do the training, and at the end of training, she said, "Oh, shouldn't you have your other department also use Chili Piper?" And the person said, "Yes, absolutely." And I'm thinking, she's wonderful. You're the CS, so people trust you because you've helped them. Customer success. And then if you ask for a favor to sell more, then they trust you. So it's exactly what every salesperson wants is trust, right? So you have the trust. So we started growing. I started create a job called relationship manager, with exactly that, a CS combined with an account manager. And I'm thinking, this is so killer. I don't know why people haven't thought of it. It's like brilliant, right? We're going to, Alina's done so well. We're going to replicate with little Alinas, and it's going to be amazing. And I go to a conference, as fate would have it, literally a week later, the Gainsight conference, CS. And there's the head of operations at the Vista Equity, who says, "Okay, there's one mistake you don't want to make. Do not merge CS and account managers." And I'm thinking, okay, somebody's wrong in this room. It's either him or me. I'm going to find out. And sure enough, I found out that I was the one who was wrong. What happened is that it was impossible to find, extremely difficult to find people with the personality and skill set adapted to both, right? So, a quota carrying account manager where you just have to negotiate deals, and being a CS who wants to help. I actually had one of these relationship manager tell me, "I don't want to look like I'm selling." And I'm thinking, but you are selling. It's your job. Half your job is selling. So you want to look like you don't want to look like you're doing your job. It's like they're worse shame than doing your job. So that specialization, I think, is there to stay across the board, with occasional exception. But overall, it's just a more effective way to run a business.
Perfect. And we got about 10 minutes left. So I will ask you on your thoughts on how this changes maybe in a product-led growth company. So is that SDR function maybe more of a product specialist? Are they still going outbound? Why don't we start again with you, Kyle?
I could talk about this based off my experience at OpenView Venture Partners, but I've had zero experience of doing a product-led model. From what I've seen in the market, and there's probably people on here that have had more experience, I have seen that there's more of a support element to an early sales role. Mostly, it's a sales-led org that's built after the fact. Like, especially if you have to move up market, like the Datadogs as an example, like it just made sense that eventually you build a sales motion to support multiple champions, and you got to figure out procurement, all that crap that happens as you move up market. And that's not the only reason you do it, but I don't have a, but it depends on your persona and your segment. Like if you're product led and you're SMB, and that's the business model, there could be a case that you need to build a sales team later, but it really depends on your growth projections and what you want to accomplish. I know that's a non-answer, but it's hard. It's hard because I just don't. I've been a part of a firm that's invested in those type of companies, but for what I know 100% of the fact that they eventually build sales teams. Calendly, Datadog, they all did.
Yeah.
Yeah, the challenge is we flirted with that. For a while with a free product, and we assign reps to converting the free trials into paid customers. And there's no question that the profile to do that effectively is very hard to identify. What we did is we put, if you remember, a couple of senior SDRs who were on the verge of being AEs with the hope that, but it was more, it was not strategically we thought a senior SDR has the right profile. It was more like, oh, we can try, and these guys are willing to do a lot. So it was more like a cheap way to address the problem as opposed to a fast way to address the problem, as opposed to a strategic thing. As Kyle said, the problem is that often people want the free product. If they want to talk to somebody, it's to talk to somebody about support. It's about a question they have. And so you show up as a salesperson and you're not helpful. So it's a very tricky part. I'm finding that even at Datadog, I'm friend with the CEO, he was always complaining about his account executives and calling them, I shouldn't say anything. He was finding that we're not working hard enough. Let's move it this way, right? Olivier, being a very polite and kind person, would not say anything bad about his account executives. But that was his observation, that there's so many low-hanging fruits on that they would just call and not make much effort and just close these deals that are already 90% closed via the product-led growth. So I think that ideal profile hasn't been, and then the ideal process of conversion from free to paid is still a work in progress. Still things that I think a lot of tools and approaches will be tried in the future as it's becoming such a large part of the industry.
I can say a ton of opinions, but I've never been in the weeds for it. So it's very hard for me to make a call.
Yeah. Yeah. One example that comes to mind that I think they are leading the pack in this is Shopify, and how they use their self-serve funnel and with their PLG motion, and how they look at it. Really, the main goal is to just unstick that user wherever they happen to be. So if they notice they're getting stuck around a pricing page, they actually have a pricing specialist that they would route you to. And then if they notice that maybe you're talking about different lengths of terms or how the product works, then they would put you to a product specialist. So interesting to hear both. Yeah,
we can simplify the funnel all day long, but ultimately, what's the best experience? That's all I care about, right? And that's a marketer's job, is how do you make it as easy as possible for somebody to talk to sales or buy the damn product? That's a marketing's job, right? That's marketer's job. So, if it's talking to somebody on a pricing page because they're stuck, fine. If it's automating that, fine. As long as it's a better experience for the end user, then I'm all for it.
So the Shopify, they actually have these people close deals, Arthur?
No, they really just, it's in that journey. They want to get them back to self-serve as quickly as possible. So they know they went down, they raised their hand to go through the self-service funnel, and they don't necessarily want to. But when they notice they're stuck, that's when little Chili Piper pops up and says, hey, do you want to speak with a pricing specialist? And they would hop on the call and say, perfect, let's get you back on your way to self-serve. So they always have the option there to contact somebody. But really, they noticed, okay, if they're coming in through the self-serve, let's just allow this customer to go as far as they can.
That's fascinating. I never heard that model. So it's like little pushers. You shoot and you just push them and go back into your path.
Pretty much, yeah.
But that does solve the problem of that dichotomy between helpers and closers that I have experienced in what I've told you before, that it's a different profile and different attitude. But if the job is only to push back into the right path, then that could apparently it does work for Shopify, right?
Yeah, they seem to be doing all right.
Depending on the market. But here's the thing. Now this is my closing.
Perfect.
It does not matter if they're a help specialist or an inbound rep. You're still introducing a headcount and a person into the sales cycle. Okay. So it's kind of beyond whether it should be an inbound SDR or a sales engineer or somebody. you're making the decision within the go-to-market model, the pre-sales model, that you're going to have a human being interact with somebody to help the experience just be better, right? And some would argue that inbound SDRs aren't a great experience, and some would argue that they are. It just really depends on the business.
Nicolas, let's get your closing arguments on whether or not SDRs should report to sales or marketing.
Well, I'll say it again that inbound SDRs should not report to marketing because they should not exist. As for outbound SDRs, no, the closing argument is, as I mentioned, that as always, the devil is in the details, right? So there are multiple objectives you want to serve with your SDRs. In our case, we found that making them part of the sales tribe worked better, and involving marketing in the messaging part compensated for that part. But I can see how, especially if you have a strong marketing leader, then that strong marketing leader can get that energy into the thing and just do the right work on messaging. So it's I think it's easier to make it work under sales, but I can see situations where a marketer like Kyle would make it work. Be successful.
Perfect. Well, on that note, thank you everybody for tuning in. I mean, we started off with two people looking at one or the other. I think we saw a lot of commonalities here, obviously some differences, but ultimately we got to be aligned to revenue. And I think if we're aligned to revenue and we have those shared KPIs, there's an argument to be made for both sides. So Kyle, thank you so much. Nicolas, thank you so much for your...
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Kyle.
This has been great. So hopefully we'll see you guys on the next Fireside Chat. This has been awesome. Can't wait to hear your feedback. Thank you, everybody.